Everyone believed he was a weak orphan in a new world with E-rank skills, but he exacts revenge by destroying them all. Tuka was a troubled kid, abused in his own home by his mother's new boyfriend after his father's death. Every day, the poor boy was beaten up, barely receiving anything to eat, as he cowered in a corner, shielding himself, while his cruel mother watched TV, ignoring his cries of pain. As a result, he grew up a lonely, weak kid with no confidence. He wakes up from a nightmare where his stepfather was beating him, only to hear the class bully, Sho, picking on a nice girl named Ya. Sho snatches her book and waves it around in the air, mocking her for reading girly novels because this ignorant idiot doesn't understand that girls can read whatever they want. Tuka imagines how, in a TV show, he'd be the hero who stops the bullying and earns everyone's admiration. But he knows that, in reality, no one on the bus cares. If he stands up for her, his frail body will just get him beaten up. The most popular students support Sho, while the others laugh along to avoid becoming the next target. The teacher, useless and asleep, does nothing as Sho relentlessly demands Ya's phone number. Without realizing it, Tuka stands up, looks Sho in the eyes, and tells him to leave her alone. Sho laughs, calling him weak, until Kiri, the most popular guy in class, steps in and tells Sho to return the book. Sho obeys, handing the book back to Ya, then moves on to torment another nerd, Yasu. Tuka wonders why he stood up for her, something completely out of character for him. But before he can think further, everyone on the bus is transported to another world. They're all utterly confused, finding themselves in a strange place while a beautiful goddess stands atop a bridge and introduces herself as Vicious. She explains that whenever the threat of a demon king arises, the kingdom of alien summons brave warriors from other worlds to defend the realm. 200 years ago, the demon king nearly destroyed the kingdom, but thanks to powerful heroes, he was defeated and the entire demon army wiped out. Unfortunately, the Demon King has been resurrected, which is why they've all been brought to this world to fight as the new heroes who will stop him. The students are completely bewildered, wondering if they're dead or if it's some kind of joke. Their teacher tells them to be quiet and listen to what the goddess has to say. Tuka looks around at the ancient architecture, the soldiers clad in armor holding spears, and the goddess with her golden eyes. He pinches himself to check if it's a dream. Kiri speaks up and asks the goddess what happens if they don't cooperate, to which Vicious smiles and replies that she won't be able to send them back to their world. Kiri then asks if there's really a way to return, and Vicious explains that a reverse summoning ritual exists, which can send them home, but to perform it, they must kill the Demon King and obtain the evil element, which only drops when he dies. Sho yells at the goddess for dragging them into a new world without a choice and refuses to help. But Vicious kneels down and begs them to save her kingdom from destruction. A student speaks up, saying they're just ordinary humans who can't do anything, but Vicious assures them they possess abilities they never knew about. Sho still believes it's all a joke, so Vicious decides to prove it. She summons a prisoner of war and a giant demon dog. The dog immediately lunges at the prisoner, killing him. Several girls, horrified, fall to their knees as Vicious chants a spell and incinerates the monster in a blaze of fire, erasing it from existence. She then calls the students forward, telling them they'll now measure their latent abilities one by one. Each student steps up to a crystal ball, checking their abilities as the ball glows in different colors. After the nerds go through, Sho approaches the crystal. As soon as his hand touches it, the ball glows bright red. Vicious looks pleased and announces that Sho has A-rank skills. Then Kiri steps up, and when he touches the ball, it shines gold before exploding. Afterward, he also checks her abilities and she, too, is revealed to be A-rank. After a few more students, another girl steps up and is also A-rank. The guards are shocked as Vicious explains that even having one A-rank person is extremely rare, but having 3 is unheard of. Finally, Tuka steps up to the crystal. When he touches it, the ball glows a dull purple. The goddess barely acknowledges him, quickly calling the next person. Tuka tries to ask what rank he is, but she ignores him completely. Realizing that even in this world, he's destined to remain a background character, he walks away. Then Yasu, the nerd, steps up and discovers he possesses a special dark ability that once belonged to a powerful dark hero, who became the strongest of his time. After everyone checks their stats, Vicious tells them they also have personal abilities that vary from person to person. Then, she announces it's time for an important ritual. She calls Tuka to the front, and a guard roughly pushes him into a dark pit. Vicious declares that Tuka is E-rank, the lowest in the entire class. Historically, E-rank individuals cause problems and are usually eliminated. But since they have so many strong heroes this time, she'll give him a chance to survive. Tuka will be sent to an abandoned ruin, a dungeon far away where criminals and monsters are sent. If he manages to survive, he will earn the right to live. Otherwise, he'll lose his life. Tuka tries to argue that he can improve, but Vicious tells him he's a failure, meaning his stats are so low that even with intense training, he won't get better. Angrily, Tuka says he never asked to be brought there, that he was summoned against his will only to be thrown away. But Kiri cuts him off, saying he's wasting everyone's time, and the girls are already tired. The whole class agrees. Defeated, Tuka collapses to the ground. Yasu approaches, and Tuka remembers how he once helped Yasu after being bullied, but Yasu rejects him, saying an E-ranker should show more respect to his superiors. Tuka loses all hope as the goddess begins the ceremony. During the ritual, they throw a leather bag at Tuka as his special item, but it turns out to be completely useless. He tries to defend him, saying that this isn't fair. Frustrated beyond measure, Tuka raises his arm and casts a paralysis spell at the goddess, but she easily blocks it and mocks him, calling him a loser for even attempting to hit her with his low-level E-ranked skills. Kiri also steps in, casting a massive fireball spell, saying he was just testing it by using a small amount of mana. Everyone laughs at the huge difference in power between themselves and someone like Tuka. Tuka, feeling defeated, lowers his head as tears roll down his face, recalling how he used to cry as a child. Suddenly, a voice from within his soul urges him to stop pretending to be kind and show his true nature, the side of him he's been suppressing for so long. Finally, Tuka snaps, looking up with hatred in his eyes. He curses the goddess, calling her a rotten hoe, and warns her to be prepared if he ever returns alive. Instantly, he is teleported into a dark cave. Trying to access his status screen, he fails because of the dim lighting. He channels some mana into the leather bag, which causes the gem inside to light up, acting as a lantern as he navigates the cave. It's then that Tuka realizes he's walking on skeletons, which sends a shiver down his spine. He wonders what could have wiped out all these people when a monster suddenly attacks. He narrowly avoids the blow and starts running as fast as he can, the creature hot on his trail. As he runs, Tuka debates whether he should turn and fight, but deep down, he knows that the level gap is so vast that stopping would mean certain death. Overcome with fear, he trips over a rock and falls to the ground. When he looks up, the monster is closing in. Frustration over his life choices fuels him, and just as the beast is about to strike, Tuka makes a last-ditch attempt to save himself, casting his paralysis spell. To his astonishment, the monster is frozen in place. He quickly scrambles to his feet and continues running. Before long, Tuka reaches the end of the cave, where another bird-like demon approaches him with deadly intent. Tuka instinctively raises his arm again, casting the paralysis spell, which once more immobilizes the enemy. Realizing that it wasn't a fluke, he starts to feel the exhaustion set in. He checks his status screen and sees that his mana is almost entirely drained. Desperate, he tries his poison spell, which proves effective as the demon's body turns black and begins to bleed. Tuka slumps down on the cave floor, wondering why his spells are suddenly so effective against these creatures. Out of nowhere, Tuka hears a noise behind him. He turns to see that the Minotaur demon has broken free of his paralysis spell and is about to deliver the final blow. Instead of fleeing, all the anger and resentment toward those who mistreated him floods back. Even though he's completely spent, Tuka lifts his arms toward the demon, determined to fight for his life. He challenges the creature, not knowing if he'll survive this time. His body instinctively enters survival mode, and he tries to figure out any possible escape route. Surrounded by monsters waiting to tear him apart, he wonders if he can still use his skills despite having no mana. Recalling that in the games he played, using skills without mana could be fatal, he decides to take the risk, knowing that if he does nothing, he'll surely die. He targets one of the monsters and uses his paralysis spell, but this time it fails. The creature launches a relentless attack, forcing Tuka to dodge and retreat. Realizing that casting the same spell twice on the same monster won't work, he notices that he has unlocked a new spell, Sleep. Just as the monster is about to crush him, Tuka casts the Sleep spell, and to his relief, the creature collapses, motionless. He quickly follows up with the poison spell, ensuring the monster won't come back to life. But using his skills without mana is taking a serious toll on his body. Before Tuka can catch his breath, a massive horde of monsters charges toward him. Thinking quickly, he uses his enchanted bag like a flashbang, blinding the creatures, and immediately begins casting paralysis spells to stop them in their tracks. As he stands there, he contemplates using his poison spell on all of them, but he's too weak. Suddenly, more monsters emerge from the depths of the dungeon, overwhelming his senses. Despite the odds, Tuka decides he won't go down without a fight and starts casting paralysis on any monster that gets close. His body starts to feel heavy, and he becomes dizzy, but he forces himself to keep fighting. Just as he's about to lose hope, Tuka levels up, and with it, his mana and status are fully restored. This gives him the power to fire off even more paralysis spells, saving himself for now. Realizing he leveled up because the bird demon died from his poison, Tuka gets an idea. He begins paralyzing all the monsters, determined to gain as many levels as possible while battling for his life. He unlocks a new ability that lets him paralyze entire groups of enemies at once. As he does, he wonders why his spell didn't work on the goddess, especially since it's been 100% effective in the dungeon. Casually, he walks past the immobilized enemies, casting his poison spell on them as he goes. When the monsters start dying, he levels up again and sits on a rock, grinning as he realizes he's created a real-life XP farm, much like in Minecraft, where he can gain levels quickly. Checking his status, he's shocked to see that he's already reached level 250, with an enormous pool of mana. Another monster falls, and once again, Tuka gains several levels at once. He then uses his sleep spell on the remaining monsters, hoping to level it up as well. When one of the creatures dies, he earns more levels, eventually reaching level 500 within just a few minutes. Confident that he can now escape alive with this many levels, he stays cautious, as there are still many monsters around. He stands up and observes the remaining creatures, but suddenly, they turn and flee from him. He scavenges whatever equipment he can find from the corpses of fallen adventurers, managing to acquire a cloak and a few other small items. As he ventures deeper into the cave, encountering even more monsters, Tuka realizes he hasn't eaten in a long time and is extremely hungry. Unsure where to find food, he remembers the monsters he's already killed. Returning to the site of the massacre, he finds a creature on which the poison spell has worn off. He draws his sword and tries to carve some meat, only to find that the skin is too tough. Frustrated, Tuka wonders if he'll die of starvation even after defeating all the monsters. Then, he notices the gem on his bag glowing purple. Curious, he opens the bag and is surprised to find some jerky and a bottle of cola inside. Overcome with emotion, he hungrily gulps down the drink, nearly choking, and devours the jerky in peace. He marvels at how the bag works and wonders if it will provide more food in the future. 2 days pass, and Tuka grows so powerful that he can now defeat large hordes of deadly monsters with ease, sitting calmly on a rock and casting spells thanks to his near-infinite mana supply. Surveying the scene of carnage, he reflects on his life and what went wrong for him to end up in this situation. He recalls his childhood dreams of killing his mother's abusive boyfriend, knowing that if he hadn't, the man would have eventually killed him. Fortunately, his life changed when his aunt and uncle rescued him from that miserable existence and raised him. He had decided then to be a good person, always kind to others. Snapping back to the present, Tuka looks around at the destruction he's caused. Though he feels no sorrow for the dead, he realizes that he was always a monster deep down and decides to embrace it. After leveling up again to level 950, Tuka continues deeper into the dungeon, where he encounters a floating eye monster, which he quickly kills with his paralyzed poison combo. Moving ahead, he discovers a room where 2 adventurers have died. Searching their belongings, he finds a bag full of gems, which he takes before continuing. Eventually, he enters a large room where he finds a skeleton. Upon inspecting the body, he discovers a wound that caused the person's death and a parchment with a message. The note reveals that the skeleton belongs to the dark hero Vicey had mentioned. The dark hero writes that he was sent here by the evil goddess Vis after she had no further use for him, warning anyone who finds the letter never to trust her. Angrily, Tuka crumples the parchment, realizing that the Demon King isn't the only evil being in this world. The goddess herself is just as wicked. Inside the dark hero's bag, Tuka finds a giant magical book filled with dark magic techniques for creating items and spells. He also finds a scroll but is unable to read it, so he puts it in his bag. After taking the hero's clothes, Tuka notices a bloodstain on one of the pages, which states that the Soul Eater killed everyone. Grateful to the dead hero, Tuka leaves and walks through the corridors until he finds a massive door. He realizes he needs to unlock something to open it, so he checks his status and sees that he is now at level 1200. Tuka wonders if he's strong enough to kill the Soul Eater, who waits in the next hallway. As he tries to enter, a beam strikes him, grazing his hand and forcing him to bandage it. He wonders how he can defeat an entity that even the Dark Hero couldn't defeat, concluding that the Soul Eater is the final boss and the key to escaping this place. Suddenly, the Soul Eater begins moving toward him, vomiting a disgusting substance that transforms into half-dead humans. Tuka paralyzes them but can't bring himself to use poison since they still look somewhat human. Meanwhile, the Soul Eater breaks through the wall, screaming. Tuka, overwhelmed and in mental agony, tries to retreat, but more half-dead humans push him into a corner. He cries out for help, amusing the Soul Eater, who laughs at his suffering. But this is exactly what Tuka had been waiting for. The moment the monster drops its guard, Tuka casts his paralysis spell, and the Soul Eater falls to the ground, stunned. Tuka laughs, boasting that he tricked the demon with his acting, knowing it was the only way to make the creature lower its defenses. He tells the Soul Eater that all his life, he pretended to be a kind, harmless person, but now his true self has emerged. In this kill-or-be-killed world, Tuka no longer cares how many half-dead humans the monster spews out. It doesn't matter to him. Whether it's a monster, a half-dead human, or a living person, Tuka is ready to kill them all without remorse. The Soul Eater begins bleeding from its eyes as Tuka calmly walks over and uses his sleep spell on everyone around him, finishing them off for good. After a while, the Soul Eater dies, and a stream of souls escapes its body, transforming into ethereal human forms. They thank Tuka for defeating the monster, explaining that they had been trapped inside it with no way of escaping while it killed countless others. Finally, the Dark Hero appears and urges Tuka to deal with the evil goddess before vanishing. Tuka retrieves the gem from the Soul Eater's body and approaches the main gate. Placing the gem in the door, it opens. He wonders what he'll do once he gets his hands on the goddess. And that's it for today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next recaps and anime breakdowns. Speaking of the next video, it's already in the works, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.